Shalom, family, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's weekly news update. And it's always my pleasure and privilege to join you for these updates, and thankful for all of you who share the link, who like and subscribe. It is growing, the number of people that are hanging out with us, and I'm very grateful for every one of you that are awake in this hour. It really helps to be able to encourage our brothers and sisters throughout the earth. And for those of you that are catching this for the first time, we do these on a weekly basis. We try not to take too many of these updates. A lot of the folks that when we began this, I had spoken to a lot of our brethren, and I kept hearing that people were disconnected from the news, and many of you were among them who had said, "That's it, I'm done. It's too negative. It's too much this, too much hype," and disconnected completely. On the other side, of course, is those who are constantly being bombarded, and that raises your anxiety level. So we needed to find a balance, and I'm very grateful that we have found that with our weekly updates, and it's been edifying. We're able to kind of keep track from what we call the 10,000 foot view. And one of the things that we like to say around here is that we want to be informed without being overwhelmed. And along that line, one of the things that we have to help us along that line is our website, remnantwatch.com. We are commanded, according to the scripture, to watch and keep an eye, to watch and pray, not just to pray. And so this is where we keep the stories that we're following, and you'll always get updates on the latest things that we're discussing on Remnant Watch. And so, again, it's a labor of love. It's something that we're thankful we get the opportunity to do, and thank a member of Remnant House, because without Remnant House, we wouldn't be able to do this. So thank you, all of you who are friends and members of this house, who stand together in one accord and make these things possible. You are heroes. You are extraordinary, and I am truly honored to know and walk with you, especially in these days. There's a lot of misinformation, disinformation. That's why we need to take a look at patterns, because people lie, but patterns don't. Right? So keep an eye on that, because when you learn to observe patterns, it's much more secure, and you're able to make wiser decisions than if you, just listen to words. Right? So again, just to encourage everyone, please like, please share, and stay connected one with another. And on that note, let's get into the news. And tonight's top story, Russia is warning the United States of the risk of World War III. Now, this is not something new to us. We knew, according to the scripture, and in multiple places, but one specifically, Matthew 24, Messiah warns us that there would be wars and rumors of wars. And in fact, over the last 100 years, we have watched one conflict after another. But this does portend a much greater conflict inbound. Russia warns the United States of the risk of World War III. Russia said the West is playing with fire by considering allowing Ukraine to strike deep into Russia with Western missiles, and cautioned the United States on Tuesday that World War III would not be confined to Europe. Ukraine attacked Russia's western Kursk region on August 6 and has carved out a slice of territory in the biggest foreign attack on Russia since World War II. President Vladimir Putin said that there would be a worthy response from Russia to the attack. So we, first of all, want to always take note that one of the reasons why we pay attention to these headlines is, what do we notice is that words precede their actions, right? So as they're getting ready to do something, you see first the war of words. Then after the war of words, what do we see? Then we see the kinetic action. That's when we start to see things, start blowing up everywhere, right? And just like this in the Middle East, this conflict continues as Israel continues to battle to the north, while at the same time dealing with internal struggles in its own country. So this is becoming a very volatile part of the world, and we're watching this unfold right before our very eyes, folks. And so, yes, we were warned of wars and rumors of war. So we shouldn't be surprised at some of the things that we're seeing. And then he specifically said to be not troubled. And as a matter of fact, Russian missiles hit energy infrastructure in more than half of Ukraine's region. So they're starting to step up their response. And as we've been observing, one of the things that we've noted is that there's been a bit of a measured response because, after all, Ukraine is to the west of Russia. And so with the prevailing winds moving from west to east, anything they shoot to the west of them is going to end up back in their lap. The barrage began about around midnight and continued beyond daybreak in what appears to be Moscow's. See this? So they slowly keep escalating. And this is something I've been observing for some time. They did not completely unleash on Ukraine right away. They've been slowly escalating this. So it appeared to be Moscow's biggest attack against Ukraine in weeks. Russia unleashed a massive missile attack against Ukraine on Monday morning, striking 15 Ukrainian regions, or more than half the country. At least 3 people were killed, one in the western city of Lutsk, one in the central Dnipropetrovsk region, and one in the partially occupied Zaporizhia, I can't say that region, in the southeast, and some 13 wounded. If I heard it once, I'd be able to say it, but I haven't heard anyone pronounce it, so I'm at a little bit of a loss at the exact pronunciation. But you see here what's going on is the slow escalation, right? So what did we see first? First, we saw the war of words. First, we saw the saber rattling and the chest pounding. Now we're seeing the kinetic action. And so this is a sequence we watch many, many times, right? So when we see wars of words going on, we do need to be cautious and wise, because that tends to be just what happens just before there is kinetic action. And that is why we watch some of the things going on around the earth, because there are other little provocations that are portending other conflicts in other places. And again, world war means just that. It means the world goes to war. And here we see Japan is saying that Chinese military plane has violated its airspace once again, unprecedented. I like to take note. I'm sure many of you do too. Some of you are very sharp, and you're picking up these little signals when you see things like this for the first time, meaning unprecedented. The Japanese government, which scrambled fighter jets in response to the 2-minute incursion, said it had lodged an extremely severe diplomatic protest. A strongly worded letter of protest was sent to Beijing. How many know that Beijing knew they were going to get the letter before they sent the plane, right? The violation of Japan's airspace by a Chinese military plane is completely unacceptable, the Japanese government top spokesman said Tuesday, a day after Japan scrambled its military in response to what it said was an unprecedented incursion. Keep seeing this word, guys. While Beijing said it has no intention of violating any country's airspace, China's military assertiveness in the Asia-Pacific, where it has vast territorial claims, has been a growing source of concern for the U.S., as well as China's neighbors in the region, with confrontations becoming more common. As a matter of fact, I saw a report that a Chinese vessel had rammed a Philippine vessel. So now they're actually, again, what do we all know? We know this. I mean, we learned this in high school in the schoolyard. Before the swinging starts, there's the pushing and the shoving and the nasty words. You know what I'm saying, right? And the next thing you know, then there's fisticuffs, right? Then there's finally somebody said something that was too far. And now the next thing you know, we got a dust up going on. Well, it isn't, we haven't come that far from the schoolyard. Just saying. We really haven't. Some of this, if you feel like some of these things seem parochial and childish, well, you're not alone. You're probably the grown-ups in the room. That's probably why, because you're looking at them going, will you all just grow up? I'm with you. Okay, I'm with you. But for whatever reasons, they keep thinking that bombs solve problems. We still haven't figured out what problems they solve, but boy, oh boy, they keep sending a solution to a problem we don't know it's solving. Russia launches a barrage of drones, cruise, and ballistic missiles at Kiev. Ukraine's military says, who's the victims here? Who's suffering? Who are they attacking? Does this look like they're hitting any military leaders? Anybody who's actually making decisions? Or is this just the average guy who's minding his own business and doesn't really care and has no dog in this fight? Doesn't really care one way or the other. And this is who the victims of these conflicts ends up being. Russia launched a barrage of drones, cruise, and ballistic missiles at Kiev and possibly other cities, Ukraine's Air Force said early Monday. Several series of explosions rocked the Ukrainian capital in the early hours of Monday, sending residents into bomb shelters. And the Kiev mayor, Vitaly Klitschko, said emergency services were called to the Holosivki and Solomansky district of Kiev. One person was reportedly injured by falling debris. And, of course, you know, they're going to continue the bravado and the we're going to pay you back. And an eye for an eye will make the whole world blind, so we can go on forever with this stuff, right? And now, of course, you know, you're seeing certain, like as Vladimir Putin was saying about World War III, the incursions back into Russia. So we're seeing the response now from Russia to put even more troops on its border. So now Vladimir Putin has pushed 30,000 troops to Kursk in bid to stop Ukraine's advance and plots new assault as B-tanks mass in Belarus. So while he's doing these bomb runs in Kiev and other places to really help the average person understand what the price of this war is going to be if they continue. And what obviously the hope is that cooler heads will prevail and somebody will finally say this is really a dumb idea. Russia has deployed some 30,000 troops to the new front line in Kursk as Vladimir Putin desperately tries to defend off Ukraine's forces. And again, folks, notice that the weapons that they're using aren't mass weapons. So they're not blowing up the really big stuff because they're trying to basically stop this conflict. But I think it's ending up in more deaths. So here they got their tanks coming through, armored trucks and so forth. And, what are we seeing? Death and destruction. Devil's favorite stuff, right? People destroying, peace being taken from the earth. And, of course, they continue to put headlines out there because, again, part of war is propaganda. That's where remember how the war got started. First, it was the pushing and the shoving and the name calling, right? So they got to come up with names like Mad Vlad. Get it? Mad Vlad. So they got to make him out to be a madman who's trying to keep his country from being attacked, right? So here we go again with more of the same, sort of demonization that goes back hundreds of years since they've been doing this. Mad Vlad Putin is coming for us. He's coming for us. Okay, and we must be prepared for the inevitable. It's inevitable. And it's their own people that end up being the victims, folks, of every one of these wars. It's the people of those countries, never the leaders. It's always the people. Ex-Defense Secretary Ben Wallace constantly begged for an increase in defense spending, but now he's out of office, and he's warned that Russian President Vladimir Putin is coming for us. Dun, dun, dun. He's coming for you. Like he's in a tank and he's marching toward London. Which, of course, is preposterous, folks. Russian President Vladimir Putin is coming for all of us, a former UK government official has wrongly declared. Ex-Defense Secretary Ben Wallace made the declaration on the Telegraph when discussing the future for Britain in the eyes of the war-mad despot. Oh, man. I mean, some of this is literally naked manipulation. And unfortunately, not everybody is discerning as the remnant. Obviously, you guys can see through this stuff. A lot of people can't. A lot of people buy into the rhetoric, which is kind of interesting. Hey, here's a quick side note that is a little bit of deviation from our normal coverage, but I found this really interesting that this happened here in our hemisphere. We're going to bounce back over to the other part of the world here in a second again. But before we do, did anybody else find this a little odd and interesting that it's almost as if the United States is putting a little spanking on Venezuela? and it seizes the Venezuelan president Nicolas Maduro's airplane in the Dominican Republic. Didn't know that that was a U.S. territory, but okay. And so apparently there are some sanctions against the Venezuelans that this purchase violated. The United States has seized Venezuela's president Nicolas Maduro his airplane after determining that its acquisition was in violation of U.S. sanctions, among other criminal issues. So the fix is coming for Venezuela. And given that story that we just saw this week with the Venezuelan gang taking over a Colorado apartment complex, some of you may have seen that. Well, then you can understand the hostility that the United States and Venezuela enjoy. And there are prophetic words that Venezuela will actually be among the countries, along with Russia and China, that may ultimately be the U.S.'s demise. Moving back over to the Middle East, where, of course, we've been watching very closely as things have fallen apart. And, of course, there were 6 hostages that were unfortunately found deceased. They were executed before the Israeli troops could get there. And it's basically brought Israel to a near halt as strikes and protests pressure Netanyahu to secure a Gaza hostage deal. And hundreds of thousands of protesters took to Israel's streets for a second consecutive day, organizers said, as the country was brought to a near halt by a general strike over anger at the government's failure to secure a ceasefire for hostages deal. It comes as public fury grows following the killing in Gaza of 6 hostages who had been seized by militants during Hamas's October 7th attacks. So the stakes have come up. We knew this. We also knew that there were negotiations going on off-site. It is interesting to watch how this unfolds, but nevertheless, the region continues in a high tense situation. And this is not looking like it's going to end very nicely anytime soon. So this is a difficult moment in Earth's history. And as a matter of fact, one of the things that you're not hearing a lot about, but continues to happen, is tankers, any tanker going through the Suez Canal, going through the Straits of Hormuz. One of the stations that I had the privilege of being on a boat in a pirate station on. So I know a little bit about this area, and this is dangerous. And sure enough, look at this. The Houthis continue to take out tankers. And the U.S. is warning of the ecological disaster. So there's another disaster. You're taking out tankers. Those aren't easy to replace, guys. So it doesn't matter if the war ends tomorrow. That tanker is still burnt. Look at it. U.S. warns of the impact that's going to have. The United States is warning a potential ecological disaster in the Red Sea following an attack by Yemen-based Houthi rebels on an oil tanker last week. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, said late Sunday the UN Security Council must condemn the Houthi attack on the MT Delta Sounian. Did you guys hear about this, by the way? Anybody hear this on CBS, NBC, ABC, anything? I'm curious. I don't know. I don't watch them, but I'm curious to know if there was even any mention of this attack and the fact that U.S. military forces are nowhere to be found and cannot defend or protect these ships from attack, which I think is kind of a scary piece of information, don't you think? If you're the enemy, you're out there thinking, hey, it's time to take out the big, 800-pound gorilla. That just encouraged you. Just saying. Okay. And on top of that, our high dependence on high tech may be an Achilles heel, right, folks? Because we're finding out, and this is something you and I have all laughed about. Who among us haven't laughed a little bit? Come on. Some of you have had a little bit of a chuckle when you thought about them running the world on a system that if it doesn't get an update every so often, doesn't even work right, crashes all the time, right? So, I mean, come on. We've all chuckled a little bit at that, like, kind of a fragile built-on sand system you got there. Needs a lot of patches and updates on a regular basis. I don't know. Not so sure. You got a lot of security issues, right? Then on top of all of that, now we're finding out that these solar flares are more disruptive and dangerous to Earth's communication systems, okay, than we thought. And a new study is suggesting that the latter stage of solar flare can have more of an impact on the part of the atmosphere satellites need to work properly than previously realized. So are they setting us up to have a good excuse why certain things go down? Possibly, right? So they're laying these things into the narrative. We keep seeing this particular narrative sort of letting us know that if this occurs, well, that might be the reason, right? So they're just laying this in there, just so that you have a reasonable, a thought, an idea. Oh, well, that's what it was. Well, it's well known. It's well known. The first wave of a solar flare, a sudden burst of energy from the sun, can knock out GPS signals. It's well known. It's just well known. Like, I mean, come on. We don't even discuss. It's so well known that we don't even discuss it. Notice how they do that, guys. That is called in sales, they call it the assumptive close. They just make an assumption, and most people just kind of go along with it because they don't want to look like an idiot, right? But the reality is, I don't know that. You don't know that. We've never independently verified any of that. We're taking their word for a lot of things. And how many of us are finding out that might not be the most intelligent move? That could be right, but we still need to double check of the double check. Come on, somebody, help me now, right? And speaking of things flying across the sky, now this is important because the scripture tells us that there will be signs in the heavens, right? So that is something, of course, according to the truth, we know to look for. So that we're not surprised by because it was foretold. Huge fireball sparks panic. Were you guys panicked? I'm so sorry you were all panicked. Were you all very panicked? Who out there was panicked? Anybody? Was anybody out there panicked? I'm so sorry you were panicked. Oh, none of you? I didn't think so. Who was panicked? Why did they say this? It sparks up panic. Oh, really? I don't remember anyone even talking about it, much less it's sparking a panic. But notice they had to put that in there. Huge fireball sparks panic as it streaks over America's states. But what was it? A huge fireball over Kentucky was heard and seen across 13 American states. Dun, dun, dun. More than 200 people across several states, including Ohio, the Carolinas, and Tennessee, among others, filed reports. I don't know where they would file these reports, but okay. Filed reports of a bright fireball. Does that mean they uploaded a video? Probably to TikTok, right? In the sky at 9:45 p.m. on Thursday, according to a NASA meteor watch. The very bright fireball was a meteor that disintegrated 30 miles above Exie, Kentucky, near Bowling Green. Weren't you all panicking? Did you guys panic? Because, everybody was panicking. You guys catching this stuff? And this is the stuff they keep doing. Now, you guys are onto it, but you got to know that they keep dropping these things, right? So if they suggest it enough times, what do you suppose starts happening? Panic. Panic starts to happen. And what is the best opportunity for predators is when a herd gets panicked. Think in terms of predator versus prey. Okay? Yeah, nobody knew anything about this. There was nobody panicking. I don't know what they're talking about. We're not all panicking, okay? We knew there were going to be signs in the heavens, right? Everybody knew that. And as a matter of fact, one of the things that we're also not panicking about, we don't like it very much, but we knew that this would happen as well, is that the sun would scorch people, right? So we're continuing to see a little bit crazy weather, guys. I mean, to be, candid here, the weather continues to be a topic of discussion. Wild week of U.S. weather includes a heat wave, tropical storm, landslide, flash flood, and snow. Yep, all in the same week. I'm not even kidding. It's been a wild week of weather in many parts of the United States, from heat waves to snowstorms to flash floods. Here's a look at some of the weather events. Midwest sizzles under a heat wave. Millions of people in the Midwest have been enduring dangerous heat and humidity. An emergency medicine physician treating Minnesota State fairgoers for heat illnesses saw firefighters cut rings off two people's swollen fingers Monday in hot weather. It's that hot that their fingers were swollen. I did see that there was a snowstorm that had hit the mountains. Look at this, West Coast mountains get an early snowstorm. So I think we got some confusion going on in weather. That's starting to get a little crazy. It's getting wild out there, right? It's getting really dangerous in certain parts of the world. As a matter of fact, Japan's got a typhoon that it's on watch for. And they, of course, continue to have everything from typhoons to big earthquakes. They had actually several earthquakes in the last year. Japan has. And so that region has really, actually, now that I think about it, they had flooding. They've had quite a few catastrophic things happen. Yeah, somebody says schizophrenic weather. I got to agree with you, brother. I think it's gotten just a wee bit crazy. Speaking of crazy, I think this is very telling information. How many of you heard that in a recent, I think it was a letter to Congress. We'll look at here at this article, but Meta CEO came out and admitted that they were pressured by the government to suppress certain information. What a shock. Anybody shocked by that? So this is the Meta CEO. All right. So nobody on Facebook should get mad at me for saying this, since Meta is saying this, right? So we should be okay. Meta CEO admits Biden-Harris admin pressured company to censor Americans. Okay. And so I believe the government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it. Wow. A little late, right? But hey, he admitted in a letter on Monday. Yeah, it was a letter. He was pressured by the Biden-Harris administration to censor Americans, particularly regarding this particular subject, which we still don't say out loud for the same reason, right? We just have to read it because they're so militant about it. Zuckerberg made the admission in a letter to House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan, Republican from Ohio, more than a year after providing the committee with thousands of documents as part of its investigation into content moderation on online platforms. So first of all, regardless of what side you're on in this debate, one of the things that we all need to kind of realize here is that it is really, really a slippery slope when you're starting to demand that platforms censor the speech of the users of the platform, which may or may not represent that platform. And I'm sure they do what they can, but to hold the platform itself accountable for something that someone posts on it is about as stupid, in my opinion, as holding a building responsible for the graffiti somebody painted on it. Just saying. I'm just saying. It sounds really dumb to me. So what I also think that they shouldn't do any of that. That, it should be like kind of buyer beware, right? And, you self-censor. Don't we all do that? We just stop following somebody we don't agree with. We just don't, and if we want to, we block them, right? We just don't want to watch any more of their stuff. It's not really that complicated. So I think once you go down that censorship road of either side, on either side of that conversation point, you're really opening up a can of worms. I'm not saying it can't be done or shouldn't be done. I'm just saying, whoo, that's a job right there. That's a job right there. And if you've ever run any kind of platform, even a small one, you know that moderation is a really difficult thing to do. Look who's there. I can't believe a gentleman named that Sean showed up and popped in. Boy, so nice to see you. And here's another face we're happy to see. Look at this, folks. I thought this didn't exist. This didn't exist. This exists? I thought they said these don't exist. What's he going to talk about if this doesn't exist? We can't even mention this stuff because it don't exist. This stuff don't exist. That's not even real. So what's he going to do? RFJ Jr. vows to stop the crime of, I don't know, the thing that doesn't exist as part of the Trump administration. So he's going to do nothing, apparently, because that doesn't exist. Remember, guys? Robert F. Kennedy Jr., dropped out of the 2024 presidential race last week to endorse Donald Trump, commented on an X post Monday, revealing he'll work to stop the criminal, clandestine, thing that doesn't exist operation, poisoning Americans and citizens of other nations. Wow. I've been saying that's an act of war for a long time. And as a matter of fact, not very long ago, we literally began to pray and called and invoked the name of Elohim for this so that it would stop. So I think this is interesting. This thing, which doesn't exist, is going to stop. Well, that's good because it shouldn't exist. So then, maybe their words will be prophetic. It doesn't exist. Well, that's good. That's good that it doesn't exist because it shouldn't. And let it be so, right? Let those things be not. Let's call those things that be not as though they were. So I think that's interesting that we're seeing that pushback, and at least it's being discussed so that it's no longer something that doesn't exist. Because we all are not, we're not going to keep ignoring our lying eyes, as we look up. We're just not going to keep ignoring that. So I'm really happy to see that. Continue to pray and ask Elohim to bring judgment in that area. So those that are responsible can be brought to justice because it is a crime. I do believe it is a crime. I believe it is a mass attack. I don't believe it's any different than walking up to someone and spraying them in their face. Just as much an assault. It's just being done on a mass scale. Moving on. I don't know if you guys knew about this, but one of the things that we're all dealing with and we're going to continue to see, and I told you guys this, he's going to discomfit people, and there's going to be difficulty in different parts of the country, and it's going to come from various ways. And one of the biggest problems we're going to have is economic. Okay, this is something that was foretold in the scripture. It was foretold in the book of Revelation that the extreme famine is on its way. And so don't be surprised by seeing some of these things. And we were paying attention to this particular report just a week ago. And now it's that critical infrastructure attack that we looked at is going to affect the whole country, folks. Even though it may seem like it's not a big deal, it will. It is still ongoing. It did not impact flights, but it did cause delays in services and so forth. What is this telling us? It's the new trend, the new way of sort of, how in Vietnam there was something called guerrilla warfare, right? Okay. And this was what made that fight much harder. Same thing with Afghanistan. It was the guerrilla warfare, the small hits, the attacking of the larger or stronger enemy using tactics that were unconventional. I mean, that's how the Revolutionary War was won. Well, this looks to me like 1,000 little cuts and attacks going back and forth. And one of the ways that they're trying desperately to control or attack is control the information that the public is aware of. So I'm watching this with interest as we're seeing Brazil. I don't know if you guys were aware of this. Brazil really going hard after Elon Musk. Did you guys see this? And Elon Musk's refusal to comply with local laws meant that X went offline in Brazil. Now, what Brazil was attempting to force X to do was it was attempting to force them to moderate or control what was posted on its platform. One of the world's most popular social networks, X, has gone offline in Brazil, the country with the 5th largest digital population, after Elon Musk's refusal to comply with local laws meant it was blocked by the Supreme Court. Millions of Brazilian X users found themselves unable to access the network on Saturday morning as internet providers and mobile phone companies began to enforce the ban. When the Guardian tried to access the network on his computer and mobile phone, they received a message saying, "Seems like you've lost connectivity. We'll keep trying." And so basically, this, he's aligned himself, according to them, with right-wing figures. So now it's become political, first of all, and Donald Trump, which of course you knew, that was part of the thing. And so basically, they're now having an attack back and forth against platforms. So this is going to be very interesting because Elon's not taking it lying down. He's not taking it lying down. He's actually promised to be quite a thorn in their side. He's going to be publishing some of their secrets. So this is going to get more interesting before it's over. And the same thing is happening with Telegram. So apparently Telegram has been another platform. I have a Telegram account, but I don't really use it much. But apparently it was used for clandestine encrypted communication. And you can imagine that could be used for nefarious purposes as well as good, right? So Telegram faces a reckoning in Europe, and other founders should beware. So basically, they've decided to go after this guy. They arrested this Pavel Durov, who is the Telegram founder, and he's actually not even the brains of the operation, honestly. It was his brother who lives in St. Petersburg, Russia. So they got the wrong brother. Anyway, he's not the technical side of that business, but nevertheless, it goes to show you how much they're tipping their hand between the Facebook admission, the X situation, and the Telegram situation. Well, we can all see now very clearly that they are very, very interested in controlling the flow of information. So much for freedom. They want you to have freedom as they allow it. Okay, as they give you that opportunity. And of course, if you're a platform owner like Elon Musk is, well, he says it's probably wise for me to limit travel after the arrest of Telegram CEO Pavel Durov. Yes, well, that probably would be smart. Elon Musk says it's probably wise for him to limit his travels. So it's getting dicey even for the richest people on Earth. Are you catching that? This is not somebody who's broke, who's limited in his resources, his personnel, his assets, his creativity, and he's brilliant. And even he is finding himself restricted. Okay, and that really should tell everyone something. This is getting dicey up and down the chain. I don't care if you're rich or poor. If you're not on board with the program, things are getting dicey. Okay, and Europe's now changing the way they manage their border. Their border control programs include a new biometric passport system. So there ain't no way slipping out of there now, man. They're tightening the noose. They're tightening the doors. Okay. So you have to use biometrics to go in and out now. Yeah. You didn't know that? Oh, yeah. If you're in Europe, you got to use a biometric passport system. It's being forced on you. Biometric. Do I need to tell you what that is? Okay. That is a combination of human and machine. That is a Daniel prophecy fulfillment if I've ever seen one, right? And so here we go, folks. And at the same time, they're squeezing your outlets. Now, many people do not understand this about the blockchain, cryptocurrencies, and so forth. That crypto belongs to you, but as soon as you put it into an exchange, that better be a trusted exchange, because they also can have political leanings. And we found that out here when Binance under scrutiny for seizing Palestinian crypto funds. Binance denied reports suggesting that the crypto exchange seized funds from all Palestinians, stating that only a small number of accounts were, quote, restricted. You shouldn't have the right to restrict anything on a public blockchain. So once they became custodians of the people's money, they were able to do this. Major global cryptocurrency exchange Binance seized its cryptocurrency from Palestinians as per request. So these exchanges have become de facto gatekeepers. Okay. You didn't ever need the gatekeepers, but it became more convenient. All right. And so this is now becoming a nexus where they're able to control the alt currencies and other pathways of using finances. And so it has seized all funds from all Palestinians as per the request of look. So depending upon where you are on the political spectrum, you might suffer depending upon left or right and who's in power. Doesn't matter who's doing it. I want you to ignore that for a moment. Just notice the capability. Just the fact that it was possible. It really shouldn't have been. So much for that. They've now found a way to compromise what should have been free flow using a gatekeeper. This is something you have to be very careful about, my friends. Okay? And this is what's fueling. You want to talk about some fuel to the opposite side. Well, this is just fueling the BRICS program, right? So here's another declaration of war, and it's a financial one. India may consider a proposal to use national currencies if non-binding. BRICS' summit in Kazan is to take up proposal on local currency settlement. This is humongous, folks, because this means that a country who's printed their own currency and has their own currency can keep using it even in the BRICS system. They don't have to necessarily convert to a single BRICS unit. So much for that being a control mechanism. They're really working hard to find alternative ways to function outside the US dollar, with most BRICS countries strongly pushing for use of national currencies for trade and financial transactions within the bloc in an attempt to de-dollarize their economies. India may consider the proposal favorably, provided the decision is non-binding and it's free to choose the members with which it wants to do currency settlements with, while ignoring some others, such as China, sources have said. So they want to be able to keep their grudges. It's kind of a odd thing, but yeah, there's some economies they don't want to trade with and others they do. So even within BRICS, it's not all goodness and light. But remember, they don't need to be goodness and light because they have a common enemy, and the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Okay, that is an old saying from the Middle East, and it is very much come to pass. Now, if you want to talk about a bombshell on this topic, this is a bombshell. Turkey has submitted its application. A NATO member has submitted its application to join the alliance. Turkey formally applied to join the BRICS nations, aiming to increase its global influence and establish new connections beyond its traditional NATO Western allies, according to sources familiar with the situation. So this is a massive departure. And of course, President Erdogan's administration sees a shift in the geopolitical center of gravity away from the current developed economies, and Turkey's decision to apply for BRICS is due to wanting to remain neutral while keeping its commitments as a key member of NATO. And so while they're trying to sort of appear as it's not quite the slap in the face that we all can see that it is, I'm certain that in NATO HQ and certainly in the West, they're not looking favorably on this public announcement. And what effect is this starting to have at home? Well, again, the US dollar was the global currency. It fulfilled the global currency requirements. It's what's coming down. It's finally dying. It has been the single global currency for quite some time. It's amazing how many people didn't know that. Now that it's coming down as the global currency, now you're going to feel the effects of it because it's no longer as accepted as it once was. And so this is where we are. And what we're now seeing is this is good news for those that have alternative currencies, because as the dollar falls, the others will likely rise. But unfortunately, the demise of the American system will be painful. Okay. So Dollar General, here's a good example. This is down at the bottom, guys. Okay. This is down where the rubber meets the road, where people literally are in survival mode. and Dollar General stock is tanking 32%. That's a lot after outlook cut spurred by cash-strapped customers. They can't even afford the Dollar General. That's a bad sign when the Dollar General its customers don't have enough money. Stock tumbled 32% on Thursday after the discount retailer cut its outlook, pointing to a financially pressured consumer. Thursday's drop on Dollar General was its biggest on record. Okay, so this is a reflection. There are a few things that are not directly from the markets because we don't really believe the reports they give us. I mean, they gave us a report about employment and then later on came back and admitted that they had fluffed it by 800,000 jobs, right? So we can't believe them when they tell us, yeah, oh, everything's great, right? We have to look at the real indicators. And one of the indicators that I think is really interesting is I never would have thought of this as an indicator until I read this article. But as soon as I read it, I was like, that makes a lot of sense. Look at this, guys. Soaring sausage sales. That's interesting. Could indicate economic turmoil as consumers turn away from costlier meats. Interesting. So sausage, of course, is $6 cheaper than beefsteak. So as Americans, families are battling the impact of rampant inflation, more are resorting to buying lower price sausage meat as an alternative to cut back on consumer spending. This, however, has some experts worried that the modest growth of sausage sales is indicative of a deeper rooted economic turmoil as the price of necessities continues to climb. The essentials are getting harder to get. And when they do give you your essentials, when you do look at those essentials like spices or flour or base elemental ingredients, what are we finding? We're finding contamination. We're finding that we've been set up and that the low price things, the things that people can't afford, are the ones that are the most dangerous. So this is becoming much more of a challenge as we go, and something that we have to, again, realize was predicted. And this is why we need to come out of her, my people, that you be not a partaker of her sins nor her plagues. Okay? So there are things coming for the wicked that should not hit you, but only if you are still mingled with them as a co-conspirator. So get out of there. And according to, remember, we did a report recently on cold cuts and, the deli meats, and an expert saying we should expect more illnesses in Listeria outbreak tied to boar's head, which is one of the main providers of deli meats. I know for a fact it's big. A prominent food safety lawyer says more illnesses can be expected, and Congress should investigate boar's head after deli meat produced in one of its company's plants was linked to an ongoing multi-state Listeria outbreak. The outbreak has led to at least 57 hospitalizations, 9 deaths in 18 states since the Center for Disease Control and Prevention initially reported it on July 19th. I sometimes wonder if they're trying to get you to buy lab-grown stuff because, after all, there's no recalls on the lab-grown stuff. I just don't know what the angle is here, but this keeps being part of the narrative. It's definitely putting the funk, putting the fear on food. Okay? It's definitely got people thinking about that. And also thinking a lot more about sickness and disease. How many know that what you meditate on, what you're constantly thinking about, those of you who disconnect and don't listen to these reports, good for you, because you don't want to be thinking about disease all the time. You don't want to be thinking about sickness. And this is constantly in the news. Google and others are developing AI that can hear signs of sickness. You want to get in front of your sickness. Google got together last week with an Indian AI startup to roll out a bioacoustics healthcare model to detect disease from human sounds. Okay? So once again, keep your mind on sickness. Keep your mind on disease. What might you have? Oh, no, right? And, of course, not to be undone, we absolutely have to have pestilence. This is also part of the prophetic word given for the last days. And we keep seeing this narrative pumped Shock spread, at least one dead after mosquito born. There's 350 million Americans. Okay. So just keep that in mind here. At least one dead after mosquito-borne equine encephalitis virus tears through U.S. It's tearing through with one death out of 350 million. You get what I'm saying? I talk about hype. Officials have raised the alarm in at least 10 counties in just one state before the death of a man in another. An American has died from Eastern equine encephalitis, a rare and deadly disease spread by mosquitoes. Well, there's malaria that's spread by mosquitoes. A lot of things spread by mosquitoes. You got to be careful with mosquitoes. I wouldn't be in a place where there's a lot of mosquitoes right now. Just saying. That looks a little suspicious to me, especially when, well, there's the potential that not all those mosquitoes are real mosquitoes. So there's that. You know what I mean? But all of a sudden, boom, the narrative's full of stories about New England preparing for mosquitoes, New York preparing for mosquitoes. Now they're talking about spraying everybody. Once again, whether you like it or not, they're going to be pumping some chemicals into your neighborhood. As Massachusetts insect season grows from bad to worse, the risk of mosquito-borne illnesses is hitting a new high. I don't remember ever seeing this. I lived in Minnesota where we called the mosquito the state bird. I don't remember being people this upset about it, right? Or concerned. So again, this is the kind of stuff that we go, huh? Interesting. Why are you making a big deal out of this? I bet there's a whole lot of Minnesotans going, where was our press coverage when we were getting eaten alive out here? Right? How many of you in the Midwest going, what? Right? So, yes, this has always been the case. I talk about it's a bit of over reporting in some regards. So I do think that some of this is a bit ridiculous. Yes, my sister from Minnesota, she attests. I mean, you go out in the evening, you better be prepared for the invasion. It's been going on for a long time. Okay, that's nothing new under the sun. Speaking of things that are not new under the sun, so you guys remember that we saw the monkey statue, right? And we saw other things throughout the land, United States of America. And you shouldn't be surprised that we continue to see judgments coming on a country, a nation that keeps thumbing its nose at Elohim. And how many of you have heard of this Burning Man? I don't want to take a ton of time, but they're hosting a virgin sacrifice party and revenge of, you got it, those kind of aliens, while Burning Man revelers embrace the old spirit of self-reliance. They're never alone. And they basically turn this into one giant worship and debauchery. I got to go quick here. Sorry about that, guys. I did not realize there were going to be some of those photos on there. So what could go wrong? If that's, your whole country is, you're not your whole country, but that's being done in your country, what could go wrong? You're opening the doors to some serious things. Oh, by the way, just to throw one more of these in here, and maybe this is one of the things you're opening the door to, right? Because after all, isn't that what happened to Egypt with their false worships? Didn't they get some plagues? Looked a little like this, or a Pochi virus, also known as sloth fever. So they got another one attached to the mosquito. So that I just thought that was interesting. I meant to share that before with the others because they certainly are clustering those stories together. So again, we're seeing pestilence, which we knew was going to be part of the last days. Now we're even seeing ancient diseases. Okay, ancient disease from 3800 BC is making a comeback in children, causing crippling pain and making their teeth fall out. What? An ancient disease linked to malnutrition is on the rise among American children, troubling data shows. The rate of scurvy, which can cause teeth to fall out and extreme pain, tripled between 2016 and 2020 from around 8 in every 100,000 to nearly 27. The condition is caused by a lack of vitamin C. So anybody suffering from this, that's the answer. That's why sailors would sail with fruit and vegetables, which is essential to keep skin, blood vessels, and ligaments healthy. Millions of children in rural American America live on food deserts, neighborhoods where there's limited access to healthy, fresh food, who are especially vulnerable. And while diet has a major contributor to scurvy, experts say there are other factors in play, including rising rates of autism in minors. And we know where that's coming from, right? So, folks, once again, you are in a multifaceted war. You are in the crosshairs. They may not have hit you yesterday. They may not have hit you today. But that doesn't mean they're not aiming at you. And it doesn't mean that tomorrow you might not have a difficult day. So be sober and vigilant out there. Take a look at this, folks. If you're in Texas, El Paso is on high alert as dangerous Venezuelan gang is described as the MS-13 on steroids is surging into the U.S. And they've already crossed into the U.S. The Mexican border state of Chihuahua is on alert for members of the violent Venezuelan gang. So again, Venezuela is in the news after receiving reports of members of the gang were moving through the state to cross into the U.S. near El Paso, Texas. And so if you're in Texas, again, it is becoming more challenging in that region of the world. And I do believe that a lot of that is a setup. I do believe that there is a severe fear that should the administration of the United States move to the right, that many of the plans that they have spent decades planning will be destroyed. So if you think they're going to take that line down, you are mistaken. If there's one thing we know about the psychotics, the crazies, they don't give up on their wild, crazy plan to rule the world so easy. You will eat the bugs, okay? And remember, these people are being run by demons. So speaking of being run by demons, this is the kind of stuff that we keep seeing, which, again, when you have monkey statues and Running Man events and other things where you're inviting in demonic activity, well, you shouldn't be surprised to see these results. A man accused of decapitating his parents. You heard that right. He's singing Tina Turner songs after being shot by deputies. A 41-year-old man accused of decapitating his parents and killing their dog started to sing Tina Turner's What's Love Got to Do with It after he was shot by an Orange County sheriff's deputy. Folks, the demonic is crazy taking over people right now. It is unbelievable the amount of demonic that we're seeing. Okay. And I know that the police officers, if we have any law enforcement that are watching this broadcast, please do comment. We pray for all of you. I can't even imagine what it must be like to be an honest, sincere, good person who's trying to do a law enforcement job in this environment. And you can read the rest of the story. It's quite gruesome. It's a very difficult story to read and very hard facts, folks. So we're dealing with some very challenging times, and I mean that. Please pray for those who are sincere, good people in these difficult jobs. Everyone from law enforcement, fire departments, rescue, emergency services. They're showing up to some of these situations, folks, where they really need one of you. They really need one of you because their rebuker ain't working. And these devils, they're crazy. It's gone to that point. And of course, you know, when they should be getting direction and training on deliverance and how to function in the spiritual realm so that they can not only free people, but reduce this damage that's being done. That's not the spiritual leadership that's being offered throughout the country. Instead, you know, this guy's here's a great symbol of the pastors, if you will, the shepherds, the Jeremiah 23 scattering shepherds he talks about. And this guy here apparently charges, I think it was something like $83,000 per person for their coaching. Yeah, life coaching. You're going to get life coaching. That's what you get from these guys, life coaching. You don't get training on deliverance, which is what Mashiach taught his disciples. You don't get training on how to be an overcomer. No, you get training on their system, how to be a good Babylonian servant, slave, citizen. Because remember, even the billionaires have to listen and come to heal, right? and do what the big state says, right? So you're seeing them grab a hold of Elon Musk, your Telegram leaders, right? What are they doing? They're letting you know nobody's above them. They're going to grab anybody. And this is why it's important that we just literally stay away from all of it. The more you're interacting, the more you're in their world, the more you're subject to their things. And our last story tonight, I didn't mean to go over our time, but our last story continues the saga we continue to see in fakianity, in abusianity. It continues to manifest. I believe we got this prophetic word at the end of last year. We knew we would see this, but it is really hard to watch. And I know that many of you are praying for these folks, and I think that's beautiful and wonderful. And it is important that we keep doing that. But there's a lot of victims out there that are now coming forward. So these victims are not new victims, guys. These are victims that have been victims for dozens of years, decades sometimes. They're just now coming out, but they've been victims. Morningstar leader Chris Reed resigns after citing sexual abuse of minors by former volunteer. It's all coming out, okay? Leader Chris resigned from all his leadership roles with the organization effective Monday, including his job as senior pastor of Morningstar Fellowship Church in Fort Mill, South Carolina, citing, among other things, the sexual abuse of minors by a former volunteer and police officer. And so he's resigning. What's happening? These guys are starting to get in front of this stuff. They know what's going on. They know what's been going on in their organizations for a long time. It's nothing new. It came from their mother, the harlot. Okay, so the mother, the harlot that was doing these wicked things, passed this wickedness onto its children. And that's the reality. And you've had nothing but fakes. When you got fakes running these things, okay, and people that, you can't tell me these people don't know his name. You can't tell me these people haven't figured it out. There's nothing I have told you that this guy couldn't tell you, but he won't tell you. Okay. And so that's the reality, folks. You're dealing with those who are controlled opposition. You're dealing with those who have sold out, who are on the opposite hill. They're among the 850 gaggling liars who are worshipers of Baal and don't even know it many times because they were duped themselves. Remember, evil men and seducers waxing worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. That's what the scripture warned us would occur. They were deceiving and being deceived. So we're continuing to see that. We're seeing that exposed as the truth is coming out. You all, as the remnant, have been used, and you're a part of the answer that is now coming out there, and people are now waking up to the truth. And I, for one, am very grateful to see you all letting your light so shine before men that they see your good work and give glory, kavod, to your Abba in heaven. Well, that's tonight's broadcast. I'm so thankful you joined us. Please do like and share. Thank you so much for joining us. May Elohim bless each and every one of you. Good night.